and welcome back to Michelle Reads and Vlogs, and today we are doing a reading wrap up for the month of November. So you can see quite clearly that I read 6 books in November. I'm going to pop those down here for the moment. Out of the 6 books that I read, 4 of them were physical, 2 were ebooks. I read 3 5-star books, 1 4-star, 1 3-star and 1 2-star. Over all of these 6 books I read 2,147 pages. So in terms of reading, not quite as much as the past 2 months, but there's a few different reasons for that which I'll go through. So one is that my health hasn't been great this month. I do have chronic fatigue syndrome. Sometimes it affects me more than others, and this month has been a bad chronic fatigue month, so that's one reason why I've not read as much. Also, I have been working a little bit more, so I am a home tutor, so I do online tuition, and my students have picked up, which is great for work. I am now at full capacity, which is brilliant, but it means that I then have less time for reading and also less energy for reading. So for those who don't know, when you've got chronic fatigue syndrome, it's almost like you only have enough energy in the day to accomplish a certain number of tasks, and once that energy is used, it's gone. We're done. The bucket is empty. So you almost have to decide where you're going to spend your energy. Obviously some tasks are high energy tasks, some tasks are low energy tasks, and work has to be a priority. So some days my energy just goes on work and that's it. Everything else is just me plodding along. So obviously read a little bit less, also done a little bit less YouTube, but it is what it is. And then the third reason is almost to do with the books that I did read, so let's get straight into them. Book number 1, I read this on the 1st of November. It is The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. This is a psychological thriller where we follow our main character, whose name I have forgotten. I remember doing this before. Her name's not on the blurb, it's inside, and I've completely forgotten. I'm gonna have a quick look. Millie. So this follows our main character, Millie. Is it Millie? I read Millie on the page and now I'm like, was that the woman? Was that the daughter? Let me skip a bit forward again. Yeah, so Millie. Millie is a complex character. We meet her at the beginning of the book. She has just been released from prison a few weeks before. She, as a term of her parole, 1 needs to be in employment and 2 needs to have a fixed address. She has to have a place to live. And the problem is when we meet her that she has lost her job and therefore she has also lost her apartment. So she's currently living in her car and she has no money, no one to help her. She went into prison at a very young age, like a late teen, and she's come out obviously in her late 20s. She knows nobody, she has no support. So she's living in her car, she's pretty desperate. And she finds this job becoming a housemaid, and it's a live-in position. So she'll be able to have her room provided for her, which means she'll have a fixed address, and she'll be able to earn a small amount of money as well to keep her going, and she can start saving that together. So it seems pretty good. She goes to the interview. The woman, Nina, who is the mom of the house, she seems lovely, really welcoming, so she takes the job. From there, things start to get a little bit weird. And it gets weirder and weirder, and she kind of feels stuck. Obviously she needs the house, she needs the job, or she could end up back in prison, but lots of other things happen in this. I'm usually pretty good at guessing or having a good guess at what happens in a plot as it's going through. With this, I guessed some things, nowhere near everything. I can see why this is such a popular, hyped book. The second one is out already. There's a third one coming out next year, and I am really excited to get into the second one because now that we know so much more at the end of this book, I wonder where the second one's going to go. I read this on the very first day of November. I absolutely devoured it. I read it in one go pretty much. And I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was brilliant. But for that reason, because it was such a good book and it got me thinking so much, I struggled to pick up another book. It was what it was. So I actually didn't read for a few days after this. I just couldn't do it. I just wanted to keep thinking about this one. Brilliant. Would recommend. Really want to get on to the next ones. The second book that I read in November was also devoured, because that was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, and I read this on ebook. I do have a physical copy or two sitting in a pile of book post next to me right now, but I am saving all of my book posts to do my next unboxing video, which I'm pretty sure I'll be doing soon, so I don't have a physical copy to hold up. But we all know Iron Flame by now. It is the sequel to Fourth Wing, which is by Rebecca Yarros. So this came out, I think it was on like the 7th or the 9th. It was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and as soon as I woke up I downloaded it on ebook and read it within just over one day, just about 27 hours I think. So I read most of it the first day. I did have to do a bit of work, so then I carried on the next morning, and it was good. So I gave it 5 stars as well. Again, if you've watched my Fourth Wing, I reread Fourth Wing vlog, or if you watched my Iron Flame Let's Discuss video, which I did after reading it, you'll know my thoughts already. It's not a perfect book. It's very similar to Fourth Wing in which there are definite flaws, especially to some of the kind of greater plot as well as some of the minor plot points. It's not a perfect book, but I enjoyed it so much. It's the dragons. The dragons are amazing in Fourth Wing. Like, Fourth Wing's great, and then the dragons come in and it gets amazing. And then Iron Flame, again, it was the dragons that went from taking it from being good to being amazing. I love the dragons. More dragons, less humans, and it would be perfect. But as I said, it's not perfect, but for anyone who doesn't know what Fourth Wing is about at this point, it is about dragons, or people learning to ride dragons at basically a war college. We can't really talk about book 2 without massively spoilering book 1, other than the fact that we do go back to the war college and we start seeing their second year studies, which is interesting to see what is different to the first year studies, and more stuff happens. I can't really say much more. It was really good. We already don't know when the 3rd one's going to be released yet, but please be soon, Rebecca Yarros. I don't want to have to wait too long. So yeah, really enjoyed that. 5 stars. So then again, I had the problem of having read 2 of these 5-star books in a row. I couldn't get my mind off of The Housemaid for days, and then I read Iron Flame and I couldn't get my mind off of that either. And I found it so difficult to want to pick up another book. And eventually I picked up, I picked up You Again by Kate Goldbeck. And this one did take me a while to get into. I can't even remember how long I spent reading this overall, but I would say it probably spent about a week on the first third, just getting into it. And then once I was into it, I read the end pretty quickly. So this is a When Harry Met Sally retelling. That might mean something to you. It means nothing to me because I've never seen When Harry Met Sally. I don't know that story. But we've got 2 people. It follows them over a few years of their lives when basically their lives keep intertwining, they keep bumping into each other, and different things happen between them over that kind of course of the time. I really liked the dual perspective here. I thought it was really good. I really liked how we basically were following these 2 people who are not perfect, and they know they're not perfect. They've got very complicated lives, complicated emotions, seeing how they deal with those emotions not just on their own but together, and how it affects them in their, I would say, relationship, but for most of the book, friendship. I gave this 4 stars. In hindsight, I'm thinking, was that a little bit too generous? But obviously at the time when I finished it, I really enjoyed it, so I think I'm going to keep it as the 4. But it was good. It was a good book. So at this point of the month, I'd pretty much struggled after reading the first 2, and then I'd kind of spent a long time going through You Again by Kate Goldbeck. So I thought I'm gonna do my thing of picking up a short book just to make myself feel like I'm getting back on track a little bit. So I read the second book from the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, so Tales from the Café by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. So I gave this one 3 stars. I just thought it was okay. I didn't think it was quite as good as the first one. And to be fair, looking at reviews, a lot of other people feel very similarly. I don't feel too bad about this, but the whole series of before the coffee gets cold. It's set in a small cafe in Japan. There is one seat in the cafe where you can travel back in time to see someone, but there are rules. Firstly, you can only travel in that one seat. Second, it starts when your coffee's poured, you have to come back, you have to finish the coffee drink before it gets cold, and you can only stay in the cafe. You can't leave your seat. If you try and leave your seat, it will kind of throw you back to the modern day present. So the first one, I felt like it was really a story looking at people and identity, and there are more stories here. Obviously it's very samey, it's the same premise but with different characters. It's a little bit later, this one. It's set a few years after that first one, but as I said, I enjoyed it. I think if you're into kind of wanting to read a short book, you like translated fiction, it's really good. Yeah, I enjoyed that one. I then read The Book of Fire by Christy Lefteri. This was everything that I needed at this time in this month. I think I would say for this month what we've really gone for is quality over quantity. This book was brilliant. I gave it 5 stars, and I am a huge Christy Lefteri fan. She wrote The Beekeeper of Aleppo, which was a very popular book. It has sold a lot, read a lot. It's got a high rating on Goodreads, I think, but her other books don't seem to have done as well. I've actually not read the one from before Beekeeper, which I do own. It's the watermelon, the fish and the Bible. I might have said them in the wrong order. I read the one after Beekeeper of Aleppo, which was Songbirds, which I thought was brilliant. And then this is her newest one, which came out maybe in August, I can't remember now, and this is The Book of Fire. And The Book of Fire is about a town in Greece which is surrounded by forest. And over time, what's happened with this forest is it's dried out a lot because of climate change and global warming. It's a lot drier than it should be. We've got a property developer who applied to have a hotel built, and a part of this forest would need to be cleared for it, and he was denied that application. And he starts a fire, thinking it will be a small fire, to clear that land so that he can build his hotel. But what happens is, because the forest is so dry, it turns into a massive fire that destroys hundreds of acres of the forest, people's homes. There are a lot of people who die because they can't get to the sea in time. They're running down the mountain through the forest and they're stuck in people's villas. I would say this is a spoiler. It happens at the very beginning of the book, so you're fine, it's not a spoiler. And they struggle, a lot of people, to get through the villas because the gates are all locked and they can't find their way around. So people do die in this fire. There are a lot of injuries, and a lot of people lose their homes. So we're looking at the effects after the fire and how it's affected people's lives, how it's affected our main characters, our family, who are a couple and their daughter, and it's affected all of them in different ways. It looks a lot at kind of climate change overall and whose fault was the fire really. Was it the fault of the property developer? Was it the fault of the emergency services like the fire services, whose funding has been undercut and they didn't get there fast enough, they didn't do enough to help stop, prevent it, or just slow it down? Or is it the fault of everyone because of climate change? And Christy Lefteri is just brilliant. So she goes and researches her books. So with all of them, she talks to real people who have been through these real situations. So there's a lot of places in Greece where there have been fires, and more deadly fires because of climate change and the growing, I've lost my words, and the drying out of the forests, and talking to the people who are the ones left behind, the ones who've lost family members, the ones whose homes have been destroyed, they've been left with physical scars and emotional scars. She talks to these people and then basically builds them into the characters in her books. And I honestly think she is one of probably the most underrated authors. But I do see why these books aren't huge, because they deal with such important and emotional topics and concepts. I can see why a lot of people who read for pleasure wouldn't want to go into something so deep. So it was a brilliant read, but I did find it quite deep, quite hard going, again, quite heavy hitting. So another book that just left me thinking for so long afterwards. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, I would definitely read this. If you read for enjoyment, I would probably leave this one for now and return to it when you've got a better headspace. But yeah, I loved it. I thought as a book it was amazing and I gave it 5 stars. The last book that I read in November is a bit of a random one because it was not on my TBR. I have started to review books on NetGalley, and because I'm new to it, I have requested quite a lot of books that I would want to read anyway, and they've been declined because obviously you need to build up your profile as a reviewer before you can start gaining access to more popular books, which completely makes sense, or else everyone would do it. So I went on to the Read Now section, so books that you can automatically download, read and review. They obviously tend to be less popular books, and I had a look through and found one which looked like it would be exciting for me, maybe the kind of the best one out of the ones that were available, and I chose A Mermaid Tale of the Lost Empire by Lily D. This is meant to be a bit of a Ariel retelling, Little Mermaid retelling. So we've got mermaids, it's fantasy, she goes to this city, and I don't really want to talk much about it because it wasn't that great. I gave it 2 stars. I wanted to like it at the beginning. Just some of the initial writing in the first section was just really bad. I am not a writer. I will put myself up there and say I cannot write. Quite often people say to me like, oh, you should write a book. And I'm like, might just leave that to other people. Like, I'm good at many things. Writing is not one of them. And I think back to when I last did write, which was really in high school when I studied English at GCSE. I always think that if I read a book and it almost reads like something I would have written in my GCSE creative writing, it's not good. It's a bit like art. I look at art and I'm like, I want to see people's artwork for talents. And if I could do that, are they talented? So I like to see artwork that I couldn't do myself. That's what I find impressive. And it's the same with reading. I want to read books that I could not write myself. I could not even think of these plot lines myself, never mind write the way that they've written. And with this book, it just wasn't good. So for example, the first time that she swam from the mermaid palace where she lives, she's a princess, to this lost, well, I say lost city, it's not a lost city, it's just a city. The first time she swims this, it takes 2 days journey and she aches all over and it takes her days to recover. You know, it's really arduous, it's dangerous because of all the creatures in the sea. The second time she did it, it took less than a paragraph. And I almost had to read back like, did I miss something? Why is she there already? And I read back and I was like, no, she got there in a paragraph. There was not a lot there. And within like a page, she's back to the part of the city where she wanted to be, meeting with the person she wanted to meet. And I'm like, that can't have happened within a page. There was just so much kind of lacking of description. I wanted to like it. I did finish it, and it was good because it's taught me what I like about reading. Because you might have noticed I don't DNF books. I'm not a DNFer. I find it crazy that people can DNF books so much, and I understand why they do, because they're like, why would you want to waste your time on books you don't want to read, that don't appeal to you? But with books and me, I love the intrigue. I'm so nosy and I'm so intrigued that I want to find out what happens in the plot, what the resolution is, and also to learn from kind of the author's mistakes. Like, how could they have written this book better? What would I have wanted to have seen from it? What would have made me enjoy it more? And more just the plot. What happens? Maybe I should just start turning to the back pages. I know that's what my mom does. She'll turn to the back of the book and read the last page. I don't know if she does it anymore. She used to do it a lot just to find out what's going to happen before having to read the book. So yeah, maybe I should do that. Anyway, so I gave it 2 stars. I'm not going to rush to look at this author again. Also, I did read somebody's comment on Goodreads. So after I left my own review, I went and read a few of the others just out of intrigue. Again, I'm nosy. Somebody commented saying that it was an AI generated image on the the cover and that some of the work was AI generated as well. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going to be very wary not to read books that are supporting AI generation of art, because it's taking away from artists, and that's something that I'm quite keen to support. Not the taking away from artists. I'm keen to support artists as a job and their careers. Anyway, I've been talking for like over 20 minutes. My tea's probably cold now. Never mind when the coffee gets cold. It's when the tea gets cold. Anyway, so I am going to go. I better go and start having a look at what I want to read in December. At the moment, I'm not 100% sure. I think I'm obviously going to have to pick some Christmas reads up, which used to be here. They're here now. So, yeah, probably Christmas reads. Other than that, I don't know yet. We'll see. I might do my book box opening first. Oh, that would make sense, because I think Bookshops and Bone Dust is in there. And yeah, I want to do that on my my TBR. Okay, that's a plan made. So my next video is probably going to be my book box and opening video, and then I'm probably going to do a December TBR video. Thank you for joining me today. If you've got to this point, please like the video. It really does help support me and the channel. Subscribe if you've not done so yet and you want to see more bookish content from me. Other than that, have a wonderful rest of the day. Excuse me. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all next time. Bye.